Welcome, Soaring Sisters. I'm Kimberly Olsen. In this episode, 5 ways to fast track to solo and beyond. Whether your training has been affected by COVID-19 or whether you are able to do your lessons right now, there are a number of things that you can do to fast track to solo and beyond. And we're going to cover those in this episode. So if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and also click on the bell to be notified of new episodes. If you haven't started flying yet, you're probably not aware of this, but if you have, you're probably starting to realize that you tend to forget elements of what you learned in your previous lessons, and things you could do the previous lesson suddenly you can't do. And this is quite normal when you're learning to fly. The best way that you can deal with the ups and downs of learning to fly is to fly really often. If you can do it, find yourself some fast track training. Typically this is a week-long course run at a gliding club that's 24/7 operation, or 24/7 for a period of time to allow students to do these fast track courses. Get yourself on one of those courses if you can and learn to fly in 7 days. If you can't get yourself to one of those intensive courses, try to do as much as you possibly can to fly often. When I was first learning to fly gliders, I would be at the field as early as I possibly could, and I would leave as late as I possibly could. And more often than not, that meant that I got first flight of the day and I got last flight of the day. So I got at least 2 flights. And often I got up to 6 flights. If I was doing circuits, if I was getting to the point where I was trying to build towards solo, the instructor might do 3 flights with me, really short circuits, and then later on in the day do another 3, and I would get 6 flights for that day. Now obviously you have to budget for that. Make sure that you save your money and allow yourself to be able to do the flying when it's available to you, but try to cram as much in as you can. Now obviously you can't push other students aside to do that, so the best thing you can do is be at the field early, stay till late, and make sure you're there every possible day that you can be there. If your club flies Saturdays and Sundays and you can afford to, fly both days. If your club flies Friday, Saturday and Sunday and you can get a Friday off, make sure you're there at the field all 3 days. If you did that maybe 3 or 4 times in a row, that would be equivalent to a 7-day intensive course. So you could find yourself in 3 weeks' time getting to solo. Number 2 is learn all of your checklists off by heart away from the field. When you're learning to fly, your brain is overloaded, and one of the skills as a pilot is to learn how to decrease that load by prioritizing the tasks. The checklists are one of those measures, but if you have to think about the checklist, then you're going to struggle to do what else is required. You might have heard of the prioritization called aviate, navigate, communicate, which tells you, fly the airplane first, know where you are and where you're going second, and 3, tell somebody about it. Talk on the radio or talk to your instructor or whatever. So the problem with learning to fly and not knowing your checklist is you're taking up lots of brain space trying to remember a checklist when you should be concentrating on the aviate part. So learn all your checklists at home. Number 3 is learn all the parts of the sailplane and the instrument names and their functions and the control surface functions off by heart. Now, if you're familiar with aviation, you may already know most of this, but try to figure out what's different about the sailplane. A couple of things to think of: spoilers or air brakes, And the variometer, you might think it's a vertical speed indicator. So try and learn everything you can about what's different in terms of the instrumentation. Also get to know the panel of your particular glider. Visualize it and visualize where each of the instruments are if you can't actually get to your glider. The reason for doing this is that you'll need as a student to be able to communicate clearly with your instructor, and that's helpful if you know what an aileron is versus what an elevator is, and what the variometer is. Is there a mechanical variometer in here? Is there an electronic variometer? What different functions does the variometer do? I mean, they're getting really quite complex now. They're not just variometers, they have GPS navigation displays and all kinds of things built into them. FLAM built in as well, so situational awareness built in. So get to know what's in your particular gliders if you have access to it. Number 4 addresses a really important point, visualization. Now, when I was going through the Australian Defence Force pilot selection process, one of the things they were adamant was that we should do as much visualization as possible. When they were designing the training, they tested many different things, and one of the things they tested was, could we get students to visualize rather than actually fly aircraft? And would that be just as effective? And they found out that it's almost as effective to visualize flying the airplane and going through the exercises in your mind and doing the actions with your hands and feet as it is to actually fly the plane, and a whole lot cheaper. So now obviously you as a student paying for your own training, it makes sense that you'd want to try and do it as quickly as you can and reduce the cost as much as possible. So what are some of the visualization things that you can do? There's really 2 main ones for gliders. One is related to coordination of the controls. You've probably learned that it's really important to coordinate rudder and aileron in gliders because of adverse yaw. I won't go into that in this video. That might be a video just by itself. But what you can do in terms of practicing and visualizing is you can practice the movement of your feet in coordination with your hands. So as you move left, press with your left foot. As you move right, press with your right foot, and so on. So move the stick from side to side while pressing with your feet. You want that to get really automatic so you can do it really on your chair really quickly. You don't need to do it that quickly in the glider. But if you can do that automatically sitting on your chair, then it's going to help you an awful lot when you get into the glider. The other one is to fly circuits in your lounge room or on your back porch or somewhere. When we were at the Australian Defence Force pilot selection, they encouraged us to do it in our bedrooms. So we would walk around flying a circuit and doing all of the actions required at the appropriate places in the circuit. So you might choose to walk around and imagine yourself doing particular things. Let's go through that. Rather than me get up and walk around on my back porch now, let's just imagine that I'm walking for the moment. So I start walking towards the airfield and I know I'm going to join downwind. So just prior to joining downwind, I'll get on the radio and I'll make the usual radio call for my circuit. Now that might be traffic, Lake Keep It, glider Papa India, joining downwind, runway 14, keep it. That might be all my call is. Then I keep walking along and I join my downwind as I said I would, and as I'm going downwind I'm going to start doing my checks. Now here in Australia that's FUST, F-U-S-T, flaps as required. Now imagine you're in your training glider, flaps as required, it doesn't actually have any undercarriage down and locked, that's because it's bolted there. I can't move it up and down. Or if it does move up and down, then go through the actual motions of putting the undercarriage down and looking down to check that you've got the green label or the label with the wheel down. There are so many people who land with the wheel up because they don't do a visual check. They move the handle to the opposite position to the one it's in, not realizing that they never actually put the wheel up in the first place. So now they've just gone ahead and put the wheel up, and so they land with the wheel up. So make sure you're using these checks as an actual check. So flaps are done, undercarriage is done. Notice how I started again because I'd interrupted myself. Do that. Flaps are done, undercarriage is done. Speed, what speed do I want? think about your glider. The minimum you'll want is 1.5 VS, or 1.5 times the stalling speed. Do you know the stalling speed of your glider? If you don't, perhaps you should find out. Let's say that 1.5 VS for my glider is 55 knots. So I will fly 55 knots, and then I will move my trim. And you notice I'm using my hands. Wherever your trim is on your glider, make sure you're using hands. If you've got a trigger trim, do this motion. So as you're walking down the imaginary downwind on your back porch or in your lounge room, do your flaps, undercarriage, speed trim with all of those things, imagining that you're doing the motions and checking with your eyes. Then, as a student pilot, you need to be doing those things that are important to learning to fly the circuit, whereas those of us who are more experienced, this all comes naturally. You need to be going, checking my angle. Now, I don't know who teaches you and how they teach you this where you are, but we kind of jokingly refer to it when I was a flying instructor as TLAR, T-L-A-R. That looks about right. And that's really pretty much what it is. You'll get to know what the angle is. And so look for that TLAR angle. So imagine you're flying around and you can actually walk out away from, maybe a line of chairs on your back porch or something and go, yeah, that looks about right. The angle will look the same, by the way, if you're using your imagination. So keep going down your downwind, and now set yourself a couple of scenarios. Oh, I've got a crosswind from the right, so I'm doing a left circuit, so I'll need to sort of point the nose a little bit out to the right, and I'll be crabbing along as I go downwind. And then, of course, if I do have the crosswind from the right, as I turn base, my base leg is going to be quick and short, and I will need to turn to final a little bit early. So do these little scenarios in your head. The next time you come around, do the scenario where you've got a tailwind, do it where you've got a headwind, do it where you've got a wind from the left. Then imagine yourself, oh, I'm high, I should pull out a bit extra brake. Or, maybe you're exactly right on the money and you turn final. Now what I want you to do is, as you're walking towards your imaginary airstrip, visualize your aiming point. Now, I don't know how they teach you in your particular club, but in the military, the way that would teach us was attitude, aiming point, airspeed. So we are checking those three things in a continuous cycle: attitude, aiming point, airspeed, attitude, aiming point, airspeed, all the way down a final. And what we're doing is we're going attitude for the speed I want, which in this case, let's say it was 55 knots. If there was a strong wind, we would add half the wind speed. But let's just stay with 55 knots for now. So imagine yourself flying to 55 knots. Visualize that on your airspeed indicator. Okay, so I've done my attitude, visualize what that looks like. Airspeed, visualize what that looks like. Aiming point, visualize your aiming point and keep walking. Attitude, airspeed, aiming point. Attitude, airspeed, aiming point. Now what you're doing is you're controlling your airspeed with your stick or your control column, and you're controlling your aiming point with your air brake. So visualize yourself doing that, and then start again, do another circuit. As I said, the military have learned that those who visualize flying in the way that I just described, their learning is almost as effective as actually flying an airplane, and a hell of a lot cheaper. So do those visualization exercises. Number 5, don't make solo the goal. So many people concentrate on solo, and solo is a license to learn. That's really what it is. It's a license to learn pretty much by yourself. So what typically happens in gliding is you have a number of progression steps beyond solo, and what you should be doing is thinking about a goal that will keep you flying beyond solo. Think of something that's quite a stretch. Say I want to fly my first 300 kilometer flight, or maybe you're really ambitious and you want to fly a 500. But along the way you're going to have to do these smaller steps. So let's say I've set myself a goal before the year is out, or let's say before the year is out, I want to fly my first 300 kilometer flight. So what do I need to do that? And you can sit down with your instructor and say, hey, I would like to fly my first 300 kilometer flight. What do you think is a reasonable time frame? I've set myself, 1 year. And then so what do I need to do? So I need to learn how to fly cross country. So let's come right back to the other side of the equation. I've just gone solo. What's the next step? The next step is an A certificate. An A certificate is, I think, 5 flights. I can't remember now. Whatever it is. A certain number of flights solo and instructed, and then you move on to your B certificate and then your C certificate. Your B certificate is kind of like consolidation, you actually really have that license to learn and to kind of get some experience that's going to get you prepared for your C certificate. Now each of these has an exam. The C certificate is actually starting to prepare you for cross-country flight and for outlandings. And then here in Australia we now have something called a GPC, Glider Pilot Certificate, with a whole bunch of different competencies. So make sure you've got that list of competencies and make sure you're ticking them off yourself as you get them and asking your instructor when they can sign you off for each particular element of the Glider Pilot Certificate. Then once you get to the point where you're able to fly cross country, that things change quite different, they become quite different. And once you get to the point where you're actually able to fly your first cross country, you might actually choose to do that in pairs, do it with someone else that can help you along. If you're going for badges, well then obviously you won't do that, you'll just fly by yourself. But it is a really good practice to get in and do your first cross country flights being led by somebody else. And before you know it, you're on your way to your 300 kilometer flight. The thing about not making solo the goal is there's so many people quit because they get to solo and they go, I don't really know what to do from here. I learned to fly a glider. Yeah, me. And you know what? There is so much more to gliding than, having your first solo flight. It's called a first solo for a reason. It's the first time you've done it. It's really important that you do it a lot more. So set yourself some lofty goals and talk to your instructor about it. Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when new episodes arrive, and check out the links below for awesome Soaring Sisters merchandise. I'm Kimberly Olsen. Bye.